Welcome back, guys, to MLG's coverage of the Acer TeamStory Cup. Right now we're in a match between Mouz Sports and Invictus Gaming. Both these teams are fairly low in the standings. Mouz Sports with a 1-3 record so far, Invictus Gaming with a record of 1-4. Now, that's going to put Mouz Sports in 8th spot in the league and Invictus Gaming at 9th spot. Of course, there's 10 teams in this league. It's round-robin group play. Every team plays every other team in the original group play. At the end of the group play, the top 4 teams advance to the playoffs. The next 3 teams in standings, teams 5 through 7 in ranks, they auto-qualify for the next season of Acer TeamStory Cup. And of course, teams 8 through 10 are eliminated and will have to go through the qualification process along with many other up-and-coming eager teams to compete in this very prestigious tournament. We can see here at this point both Mouz Sports and Invictus Gaming are actually fairly low in the rankings. If they don't start getting some wins soon, they will be eliminated from next season. In fact, we can go ahead and look at the current rankings. We can see here, oops, there we go. Sorry, guys. We can see here with the current rankings, Western Wolves tops the pack, Quanta Gaming in 2nd, Acer in 3rd, Axiom in 4th. Liquid Complexity Millennium are following in the middle of the pack. Mouz Sports, Invictus Gaming, and Empire Ents are in the bottom. But you can see, Mouz Sports wins this match. All of a sudden, they're 2-3, and they're up there in the middle of the pack. They win 1 or 2 matches more. All of a sudden, they could be 4-3, they could be 5-3. Potentially, in theory, if they win all the rest of their matches, they could end up with a score of 6-3, which is probably good enough to make the top 4. But 5-4 is probably not, so Mouz Sports cannot afford any losses. Invictus Gaming with a record of 1-4, playoffs are probably entirely out of the question, but they could definitely get a middle of pack spot if they try to even up their score, getting at least 4 wins by the end of the season. But they only have 4 more games. They have to win 3 of their next 4 series in order to really get that middle of the pack ranking. Now, so far in this match, we do see Invictus Gaming with a 1-0 lead over Mouz Sports. Jim just took out Hasselwabs. Hasselwabs tried to Dark Templar rush, but took too much damage to Jim's 3-gate pressure, and the Dark Templars were parried by an Observer Jim constructed at home. It looks like it's going to be Vortix as the next player. Of course, Mouz Sports, a lot of great players. Most of their team is from Germany, but they also have Vortix from Spain. They also have Lucifron from Spain, although he hasn't been playing for a bit, I believe. I don't even know if he still actually plays. They definitely haven't been using him. But Vortix is one of their star players. Of course, he's I was going to say undead, because Vortix was a very, very, very good Warcraft 3 player previous to his entrance into the StarCraft 2 scene, playing undead, one of the top players from Europe. But of course, he plays Zerg in StarCraft 2. In fact, he was the only non-Korean representative at the past weekend's WCS Season 3 finals. While he did get, unfortunately, eliminated, he did take a map in both this series. He showed some great Zerg versus Protoss. He also took out a very tough Korean Stardust in Zerg versus Protoss in a WCS Europe round of 8 this past season. So I actually really like them choosing Vortix against Jim. Jim is probably Invictus Gaming's toughest opponent for Mouz Sports. He's probably their ace player, you could say. And Vortix is probably Mouz Sports' best player to go up against Jim, given that he excels in the Zerg versus Protoss matchup. And also, the current map for game number 2 is going to be Derelict Watcher, a map that some Protoss find difficult to take a 3rd base. And even more important, when dealing with a Protoss like Jim, who loves his 2-base timings, loves his micro-base strategies, is that on Derelict Watcher, the engagement area for a Protoss going towards a Zerg's 3rd base is very open. So force fields aren't quite as effective. Brute force Zell attacks are still great, but Jim, who really loves using those force fields and blink micro degrade effect, Derelict Watcher, not quite as strong for his 2-base timings. We'll see if Jim mixes it up. But now we are here. Oops, sorry, we'll keep this at 0-0. Of course, these are players. The overall match score you can see there, but the minimap 1-0 in favor of Invictus Gaming. And here we are in Derelict Watcher. Has already won a map for his team, is looking to extend the lead to 2-0. Representing Invictus Gaming, hailing from China, we have the blue Protoss, Jim. And of course, his opponent, in the upper right-hand location, representing Mouz Sports, looking to equalize the score. Hailing from Spain, we have the red Zerg, Vortix. Vortix, one half of a fearsome strategy group of people known as the Duran brothers. Vortix and Lucifron, dominant players from the Iberian Peninsula. Of course, Lucifron, Terran. Vortix, more active as of late. Continuing the legacy of domination that both the players showcased in Warcraft 3 and in StarCraft 2. Jim, often called the Incredible Jim or Jim Credible, regarded as the most talented player in China. And we'll see how he decides to play this game. Against Zerg, he often likes to choose micro-based strategies, similar to many of the top Chinese players, really focusing on their mechanics to try to just purely outskill their opponents, as opposed to many of the players from the Americas and Europe who kind of try to out-strategize, think up of clever builds and tricky play. Many players from the Chinese scene just want to showcase their raw skill at the game. Jim, one of those guys, incredible micro behind this player. Of course, in an online game that may favor Vortix. It is hard to tell. Jim also, of course, plays many online cups. Every player from China does, and encountering the latency playing from China to outside China is something that I'm sure he's used to. Of course, this match is being played on the America server. A fairly neutral battleground for a duel between a Spaniard and a Chinese. We do have Jim going for the 20 Nexus, expanding boldly. The Observer from Vortix going to go ahead and spot this build. Mothership Core is being produced, so any Zergians that are sent to try to pester that Nexus will be dispatched. Sometimes Zergs who anticipate their opponent going for early gateway expand will get early 4 Zerglings. Now that's not what Vortix is doing. He's going for early speed and only a couple Zerglings. You can see there aren't. I mean, he could have had 4 Zerglings actually almost across the map, and the goal of those 4 Zerglings is to try to kill this pylon right here, force a cancel on it, delay the Protoss wall, supply block the Protoss, and be annoying. Jim was very fast in getting his Mothership Core. Instead of getting the Nexus at 21 supply, actually got at 20, and then he actually still did not get his 21st probe. He still got the Mothership Core before the 21st probe to help counteract that strategy of Zerglings going for that first pylon. Vortix did not try for that, though. He's just sending in 2 Zerglings. He's going to keep Sky in the front. Get an eye on the gateway count. If you can see a lot of gateways, he knows there's no super fast Stargate. Of course, a couple gateways is always standard. We see Overlord positioning around the back to help scout. Mothership Core is going to stand in front of the ramp. If it extends too far, Zerglings can run by it. Remember, Mothership Core is a slower unit. Overlord is going to sneak into the main now. Meanwhile, Sentries dispatched the rocks. Now they're looking for the Overlord. What can this guy see? 2 Sentries. They may tickle, but those tickles are painful. Over time, the Overlord will die. Now Zerglings come in the front. They see the Stargate. They see the 2 gateways. He's going to see the fact that Warp Gate is not being chrono boosted, so it's not a super aggressive 3-gate push. There may be some Zealot pressure later, but it's a fairly standard opening from Jim so far. Vortix takes his 3rd hatchery. We also notice he still hasn't put guys back on gas. He has completed Zergling speed, and we can see that being used as this Zergling is still alive and still scouting all around the base of Jim. In fact, wait, if Jim doesn't react quickly, he will lose a probe. No, he does react quickly. Wait a minute, the Zergling comes back. Does not quite get it. Jim keeps all of his workers alive. Units lost here, 0 for Jim. 150 for Vortix. Of course, that is 2 Zerglings and an Overlord. Not the biggest loss, considering he does know exactly what his opponent is doing. He'll know exactly when to build a Spore Cores to stay safe. Now look at what Vortix is doing. He's sending out these speedlings everywhere across the map, wanting to make sure there's no proxy pylons. Proxy pylons, the bane of Zerg existence. 10 more speedlings being built, just in case any Zealot aggression comes. He knows that Warp Gate is done by now. He knows there's 3 gateways. There's a potential for Zealots to be a problem. Jim, though, not dedicating himself to warping in a ton of Zealots. Instead, focusing on going to 4 gases. Focusing on his probe production. A lot of chrono boost has been allocated to the probes. Focusing on getting his upgrade out. Built a forge. As well as Phoenixes. He's scouting around the 3rd base, seeing if there's any Overlords poking in there. There are speedlings. Jim continues probe production. He's at 44, no signs of stopping. And Robo's underway as well. I think we're very likely to see Jim take a third base here. Speedlings try to poke in. Denied by a sentry. They're going to retreat, but they spotted the Forge. That usually gives away the fact there's probably not going to be a super early 2-base timing, given the fact there was a gateway expansion. Meanwhile, Spore cars are being constructed now. As soon as the Phoenix threat becomes big enough that Queens become vulnerable, you need to get those Spore cars to keep the Queens alive. Of course, Queens, very essential to the Zerg economy. Queens are the units that help the hatcheries produce additional larvae for additional reinforcement capability. A couple drones being picked off here. So Jim's not going to be too sad. He gets some kills with the Phoenixes. Vortix is going to keep an eye on his opponent's third base. Jim, meanwhile, just continues to reinforce his Phoenixes behind us, going straight for Colossi. We do see probe production is continuing, though. Jim is now prepared to take his third base. How will Vortix deal with the third base from Jim? Will he dedicate himself to an attack? Hydralis Den is finishing. I actually really like how Vortix has avoided getting a Roach Warren. This is looking a lot like play similar to that we saw of Startail Life. We saw Startail Life utilize a lot of early Hydralis attacks in many of his games. In fact, we saw him take out, I believe it was Deer in IM New York City just a couple weeks ago, with using a lot of Hydralis attacks, very, very fast, skipping the Roach Warren to get a massive Hydralis force. But look at this, Vortix not doing the same build, dedicating himself to additional drone production behind a small group of Hydralis. You can see he's going to go up to almost 70 drones now in just a second. That indicates a desire to take a fourth base most likely fairly soon. But it's also curious that he's not dedicating himself to aggression and he's not teching either. Maybe it's a higher econ aggression. Traditionally, Zerg either plays very aggressive on a lower 3-base drone count to try to deny the Protoss third, or they tech the Hive as fast as possible to get those Vipers into play. Vortix, it looks like he does want to do a mass Hydra bust, but he may have droned up enough that by the time these Hydras cross the map, we're going to see Jim is going to have, he's going to have 2 Colossi out, in fact, by the time the Hydras can cross the map. 2 Colossi. He may even have thermal lands done, and that's a composition that pure Hydralis is not super effective against. Vortix may regret his decision not to tech for Vipers here, as he's looking to put on aggression. But if you look at the army values, yes, Vortix is a little bit ahead in supply, but the army resource values are favoring Jim with the more complex and supply-dense composition here. There's force fields available, there's Colossi and Void Rays. Here come the Hydralis. Force fields keeping them back. They're picking off not even a single Phoenix, actually. Luckily, Vortix minimizes losses there, but you can still see units lost. Only 250 for Jim, 1450 for Vortix. Now he's falling back on the fourth base. Now he's getting the Roach Warren to Spire, but still no Hive Tech underway. Perhaps a follow-up attack with mass Corruptors maybe in Vortix's future. I don't think he can switch to Mutas here. I think he's already committed to too much of a ground army. 11 more drones on the way. We are going to see how this works. You know, I'm not sure if he can switch to Mutas, but also Jim already has 2 Void Rays. He's adding, he has 2 Void Rays. He's adding a 3rd Void Ray. Void Ray is extremely effective against Corruptors. To take this on, Vortix will need an enormous Corruptor force. And always a Zerg problem is that if you invest all your resources in this massive Corruptor force, even if you take out the Void Rays, even if you take out the Colossi, you may not have enough Hydras left by that point to even deal with their Stalker force. You can see behind us, Jim going for +2 weapons and Blink. He may look to attack once all those upgrades are complete. Look at this, a speeding run by. Oh, but Jim, so on top of things, leaves a sentry back to defend. Speeding's looking to attack the 3rd base now. Warpin is going to defend. There are 2 cannons there as well. Jim confident in his defenses. Oh, it looks like Vortix is going to try to get some probes. The big deal here, though, is can he get enough probes? Let's see. He got 5 probes. That's not enough to make that attack worth it. And now Jim is crossing the map. There's no immediate warp-in spot. Jim needs to get a pylon up, but the creep is really in his way. That could play into Vortix's favor. I think Jim really wants a pylon. There goes the pylon. Of course, so essential to Protoss, warping in units mid-battle. Meanwhile, this is the problem with Derelict watching for Protoss. It's a very open engagement. Look at all the service here Vortix has. He's coming in here now. Great time warps going down. The Corruptor is going straight for the Colossi. Perfect targeting there by Vortix. He's pushing forward here, but is Jim's army too strong? Look at the Corruptor's melted a Void Rays. Cannot even take out both the Colossi. And Vortix is forced back with massive casualties as the time warps deny his retreat. Pushing forward yet again. But now there's 2 Colossi. Look at the warping from Jim with the pylon up. That's going to be GG. And Jim takes a decisive game 2, putting Invictus Gaming up 2-0. Are we going to see Jim get an all kill here against Mousesports? Who can stop him from the German team? I don't know, man. Jim looks so freaking good right now. And, you know, in that game, Vortix looked like he wouldn't do this Hydra attack, but then he built a lot of drones. So his attack didn't hit fast enough. It didn't hit before Colossi, which is a big problem. And then he had to back away. And at that Protoss armor, you've got a bunch of Void Rays, a bunch of Colossi. At that point in the game, Zerg really wants to have Vipers or some insane, overwhelming force. Vortix had neither and was forced to GG, giving Jim the victory. Who will Mousesports use next against Jim? We'll find out soon. Game 3 coming right up.